So old Rose drifts off in her bed, and it cuts to the bottom of the ocean, where the ship is mangled and decayed. A second later, a suited man opens the door for her and leads her into a wide room, and we see a bunch of the crew and the passengers and the captain, and finally Jack, standing in front of a clock frozen at 2:20, the time the ship sank. He reaches out and he takes her hand, and they kiss. And everyone cheers because she's one of them again. Another lost soul cursed to wander the ocean depths. Another permanent fixture on the dreaded RMS Titanic.
Come on, Dave, this is ridiculous. It's not a horror movie.
Well, what would you call it? Everyone aboard. Rich, poor, captain, string quartet, that guy who bashed his head off the fan.
It's called a propeller.
All their souls are stuck standing around in a semicircle watching a clock for 85 straight years by the time Rose shows up. Doesn't sound like freedom to me.
They're not trapped. It's a metaphor for the afterlife. Rose died and the ship represents a vision of heaven. There aren't literal ship spirits awaiting her return. It's not the Flying Dutchman.
If you say so.
What you doing? Are you drawing?
Yes. You're going to be one of my French girls.
You don't really believe it's about a ghost ship.
I don't get your obsession with this movie.
Something's off about it. Something about the old woman tossing the necklace into the ocean.
You don't believe a woman would throw away jewelry? It's pretty sexist.
I understand she's rejecting wealth, and I know it's meant to symbolize her heart returning to Jack and the ship, but it's just so...
Stupid?
Exactly.
Nailed it.
I mean, what happened to subtlety? She drops a $1 billion necklace literally called the heart of the ocean into the Atlantic?
Yeah, it's returning to its proper place. The same way Rose returns to her proper place with Jack. Because the ship's recollecting everything it lost. Because it's the Dutchman.
What did you say?
Do you fear death?
No, not that. Damn it, I almost had something. Do me a favor, would you recap Rose's character arc?
Oh, is that all?
Briefly.
Sure, I'll give it a shot. Rose is a 17-year-old with a sombrero who looks 25. She recently lost her father in a tragic and mysterious accident that has left her broke.
You know the money's gone.
Her mother, a proud woman from a long line of gold diggers, does what any good gold digger would do. She panics and tries marrying her daughter off to the heir of the Pittsburgh steel fortune, in this case played by Billy Zane, who's awesome, but unfortunately also has a mean right hook. Rose doesn't want to marry Billy, and after losing her cage match to him, she decides to Epstein herself off the ship's stern. Wait, am I using that term correctly?
I deeply regret asking you to do this.
We get demonetized if I say suicide on YouTube.
But you... Go on then.
Thank you. Before Rose can finish her Epsteining, she meets Jack, a go-lucky prostitute artist who teaches her that being poor is fun and spitting is cool. They spend the rest of the movie scampering around the ship and avoiding Billy, who's now trying to Epstein Jack, all while the ship slowly sinks and everyone tragically dies. Except Rose. And Billy, who dies off-screen later from a tragic, self-inflicted Epsteining.
But the crash of 29 hit his interest hard, and he put a pistol in his mouth that year.
Back on the mainland, Rose goes undercover by taking Jack's last name,
Rose Dawson,
which she would give up 2 years later after marrying some anonymous man who's strangely absent from her family photos. There's also a whole thing about her finding the courage to abandon money, even though she's landed the world's most valuable jewel.
That's it. That's my problem with the movie.
What is?
She gives up her fortune.
Sam, that's the point of the movie.
No, it isn't, though. The point of the movie is a class divide. Rose feels trapped because she's made to perform high-class rituals and routines that prevent her from living the life she wants.
teach me to ride like a man.
Right. James Cameron proves that poor people have fewer obligations than the rich. If they're vacationing on a cruise ship circa 1912.
I do so want to be poor.
You want to be poor?
That's exactly it.
Sam, you're not this stupid.
No, listen. What you're saying sarcastically is precisely my problem with the film. Cameron argues that Rose's position within the class structure is suffocating her spirit.
That fire that I love about you, Rose, that fire is gonna burn out.
There's nothing wrong with that exactly, but he screws up. He confuses class and money. He doesn't understand the difference.
Yeah, but is there a difference?
What did one poor person say to the other?
What?
Who cares?
Maybe not today, but there certainly was at the turn of the 20th century. Back then, everybody was split up between high and low society. Being low society was the default, while being accepted in high society took effort.
And money.
No, the appearance of money. The movie even makes this point. Before the film starts, Rose and her mother are already broke, yet they continue to be accepted in high society because no one's figured that out yet.
Fine, but I'm not sure what you're getting at.
If the way to be accepted into high society is to appear rich, then the way out of it is to appear poor. You don't actually have to be poor. You can live in a small house and never work again while still never bumping elbows with the upper class. Just hide your money in banks or under floorboards and live how you like.
Sam, Rose lost her family fortune. She didn't have the option to stay rich and pretend to be poor. Her choice was between marrying Billy Zane for money or losing everything she owned.
Yes, that's how Cameron wants it framed. And it's true that most of the movie presents that as the story choice. Stay rich and caged or become poor and free. A traditional but miserable future or an uncertain one. Billy or Jack. But it doesn't make sense. At the end, when she returns to the shore and finds the jewel in her pocket, she's already told people her name is Rose Dawson, which removes her family legacy and obligations. She's now officially lower class by default. She's also holding on to the most precious gem in existence, and rather than cash it in and live her life as a rich person outside the upper class with all the freedom that affords, she keeps it hidden until she's 200 years old, when all of a sudden she feels the urge to throw it in the ocean rather than sell it to construct a new children's hospital. Because Cameron chooses to sacrifice story logic for symbolism.
Or because he doesn't understand that money has value outside social credit.
Exactly.
Rich people are weird.
There's no reason Rose should have kept the necklace. It would be relatively easy to sell. People and objects were much harder to track before security cameras and the internet, which is why it was so easy to give the shoreman a fake name.
Rose Dawson.
And perhaps why there was no record of Jack.
There wasn't?
No, there was no record of Jack as a passenger on the ship.
We never found anything on Jack. There's no record of him at all.
It's probably because he won his ticket in a poker game.
How did I miss that?
It's just a throwaway line, although some people think Jack never existed, that Rose made him up. It's far-fetched, but Cameron does make things ambiguous, especially with the weird way Rose responds.
And I've never spoken of him until now. I don't even have a picture of him. He exists now, only in my memory.
So you're saying Titanic is Fight Club for teenage girls?
Well, no. Wait, maybe?
Does that mean she drew the picture of herself?
It's possible.
Hold on, was she screwing the car?
Slow down a second and think it through. The only way for Jack to be a figment of her imagination is if Rose had a psychotic break. So much of the movie is centered around Jack. The dinner scenes, the dancing, the whole handcuffed to the steel pipe thing.
Right, and all the shouting.
Almost every major character interacted with Jack in some way, sometimes without Rose present. The only way for this theory to make any sense would be to go the route of the unreliable narrator, whereby Rose is a liar or completely delusional.
I was leaning over and I slipped.
And then you can't rely on much of anything in the movie.
What if she was delusional? Maybe the ship wasn't real at all.
Titanic actually sank, Dave. It's not fictional.
No, I know that. I mean, what if Rose wasn't on it? What if she was some old lady with dementia?
The woman in the picture is me.
That's a bit dark.
Hold on, say old Rose really used to be upper class and her father really did die and leave her with nothing. Maybe she couldn't cope with the idea of being poor, so her brain concocts a fantasy to help her transition into a life of poverty.
Poverty? She lives the rest of her life flying private planes and riding horses.
Poverty for rich people?
Right, never mind.
She could have imagined herself on Titanic because the ship kind of mirrors society's class structure. The rich are fixed at the top, the poor at the bottom, the whole machine's kept running by lower class workers shoveling coal and waiting tables, while middle management types are the ones steering the ship and directing the staff. All of them are at the whim of the rich.
Because I'm just a passenger, I leave it to your good offices to decide what's best.
Please don't make this too political. I was in a good mood.
So Rose imagines herself in first class at the top of Titanic, where her position is rigidly fixed in place. Then the iceberg hits, which is a representation of her father's death, and then the whole ship suddenly goes into chaos. Now, up is down, down is up, the lower class is mingling with the upper class, everybody's trying to avoid the water. The whole structure of society loses meaning. Before long, Billy Zane's money and bedroom eyes can't get him into a lifeboat because money and class are meaningless. And by the end, everyone's flailing around together in the water, all at the same level.
So let me get this straight. You're saying that Rose was never on the ship. She was just some rich woman whose father died. And to cope with becoming poor, she imagined she was on Titanic, where she fell in love and chose to leave her fortune behind. Because that delusion was somehow easier than being made poor against her will.
Yes.
Fine. So according to this insane theory of yours, I suppose the ocean represents equality?
Nah, probably just the unknown.
And Jack?
He's just sort of an inner voice that eases her transition into the lower class. Sort of like a reverse Merlin.
A reverse Merlin she has intercourse with.
Yeah.
What about Cal?
Who?
Billy Zane.
Oh, her mind made him up to make the upper class less appealing. He had to be a controlling prick so that she could choose not only to embrace poverty but also to reject wealth. Otherwise, she'd probably feel like she was missing out once she became penniless.
With horses.
Relatively penniless.
So what about her portrait? If everything was a delusion, Bill Paxton wouldn't have found it at the bottom of the ocean.
It isn't her picture. Who knows who that woman was? Could have been anybody.
And the necklace? The heart of the ocean?
Another delusion.
It's not a delusion if Bill Paxton was looking for it.
No. The one she had was a delusion. The real one's still at the bottom of the ocean somewhere, or at least probably. Paxton could probably find it if he kept looking for it. But the one she had, the one she dropped into the ocean, that's a hallucination. No one but her saw it.
And the ending? When she returns to the ship? What's that meant to represent in this scenario?
Well, it's like you said, she's old and dying, and so her mind is comforting her with images of her previous place safe atop the upper crust of society. She never wanted to be poor, and she never wanted to reject the upper class. That's why her vision is of being back on the Titanic where she's rich again. You said it yourself. That scene is meant to represent her own personal heaven, right? Well, take a look at what she's wearing. Do you think someone who rejected her fortune because she loved freedom and poverty would imagine heaven to be the Titanic lobby where she's dressed like she owns a bank? Is that the heaven of a humble woman who learned that money doesn't matter?
At least you don't think it's a ghost ship anymore.
It can be both.
You know what I hate about film critics? Some of them treat their job like finding faces in clouds. They project whatever the hell they want on there and make it fit.
Yeah, I hate that too.
So you're going to show me my picture?
Sorry, can't.
Because?
Because we're on YouTube. And every version of you I drew has breasts.
Oh. That's nice.